This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Have you seen recently how runway shows have incorporated working class aesthetics into their looks? I mean, there was the Balenciaga yellow vest sold more than $1,300. Recently I was watching a Fashion Week reel on ID and saw that. I have no clue who this person is, but what is that? Another reel from them showed fashion designer Jeremy Scott wearing the same type of t-shirts that people at my village pubs wear. So what is going on? Is that cultural appropriation, cosplaying, or cultural appreciation? And why is it so difficult to talk about the working class as an aesthetic? So these are the questions we're going to ask ourselves today. C'est parti! In a TikTok video produced by Hack Mag, one of their members described what she called Berlin poverty play. By that she means the tendency young urban Berliners have to cosplay a poverty aesthetic, to dress with worn-out second-hand clothes, to complain about rent and gas prices, but once they go back to their family home for the holidays, their Insta screams middle class or upper class even. She said that cosplaying a working class aesthetic served to give those people street credibility in a city that has a very important political history that, as she says, has anti-capitalism in its DNA. I found that notion of street credibility super interesting, and I have also seen it in other places in the West. Not so much in Paris, to be honest, but more in places like Brooklyn, especially Williamsburg, and a little bit here as well in Barcelona. Now, those people don't look like the working class look like today. They look like the 1980s to 2000s working class aesthetic. That is exactly the aesthetic that was portrayed in that controversial photo shoot Kim K did with Kanye a while ago. They were posing in barely furnished rooms, wearing worn-out clothes, and people didn't like it, obviously. The most common criticism I saw was, why do you guys try to look like normal people? So street credibility, relatability. Basically, privileged people do not want to look rich, and, that's understandable. It's kind of a basic survival mechanism, isn't it? Now, the problem with rich people using working class aesthetic isn't limited to appropriation. In fact, if you're one of those people who believe we are too harsh with billionaires, well, I'm happy to tell you that the hate is reciprocated. Rich people do not like poor people. A really great book came out in France recently, and I hope it will get translated. It's called Servir les riches, to serve the rich. But there's also Owen Jones' Chaz that is a classic on the topic of class contempt. So for example, I found out in Hack Mag's TikTok video I showed you earlier that Urban Outfitters describes its consumers to Wall Street as follows. The urban customer we always talk about is the upscale homeless person who has a slight degree of angst and is probably in the life stage of 18 to 26. Homeless refer to the fact that their consumers pay rent, they don't own a place. But, you could have picked a better adjective, maybe. I found another example of class contempt in one of Tinoir's videos, in which she talked about female rappers simultaneously using sex workers' aesthetic, most of sex workers being working class, and expressing disdain for the same workers in their lyrics or in interviews. The combination of appropriation and class contempt means that the way rich people are going to use the working class aesthetic is going to be very different from what it actually is. It won't be authentic. In his book on taste, French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu theorized that the pure gaze of the bourgeoisie is inherently different from the functional gaze of the working class. What distinguished the two was the primacy of form over function for the first, and of function over form for the second. The bourgeois prioritizes form, there's nothing functional about going around with a lion's head stuck to one's dress, or red paint all over one's body. Now, you could say that sex workers, who are, again, mostly working class, also prioritize form over function, but it's not true. The pleaser shoe, for example, is engineered in a way that maximizes comfort. And yes, the form looks great too, but no worker would wear it if it wasn't comfortable enough. Similarly, when a British union member was interviewed on TV about an ongoing rail strike, one Twitter user commented, "Standing there in a £390 skirt isn't helping a cause about striking for pay rises." The first thing that I found interesting is that if you live in the UK, you know that the brand The North Face is often associated with working class people. And second thing is that, aesthetics put aside, a North Face coat is a good quality coat that one can keep for longer. So we have this image of the working class family buying a lot of fast fashion, but it's not really accurate, right? Working class, lower middle class households keep and reuse and recycle everything they can. In fact, most things have more than one function. In her autobiographical novel, The Years, French author Annie Ernaux described that everything had to be put to use. The pen case, the Le Franc paint box, the packaging from Le Petit Beurre biscuits, nothing were thrown away. The contents of night buckets were used for garden fertilizers. The dung of passing horses collected for potted plants. Newspaper was used for wrapping vegetables, dyeing shoes, wiping one's bottom in the lavatory. Now, the passage I read from The Years depicted the 1940s. At that time, globalization wasn't as strong as it is today. Capitalism and capitalist opulence wasn't as strong as it is today. That means that a statement like the bourgeois prioritizes form and working classes prioritize function isn't exactly true. For instance, Chris Smalls, the person that co-founded the Amazon labor union, is often seen wearing Gucci, Versace, so luxury brands. Big logos, visible labels have become a working class fashion staple, but maybe we shouldn't be too critical about it. As Alessandra Asteriti explained, by appropriating bourgeois culture, working class youth are temporarily escaping their own situation of disadvantage, to which they will be inevitably pushed back because the terrain on which taste and choices are made will shift under their feet. On the other hand, when bourgeois people adopt the culture of the working class, they are leaving behind the privileged position to which they will return. She therefore wonders, is it right to chastise the working class for internalizing certain behaviors and tastes when they are not in control of this process but victims of it? So yeah, the form versus function paradigm is a bit more complex than it seems. And you know what? Reducing the aesthetic of the working class to something that is functional can become a bit problematic. Why, you will ask? Because it means that ultimately what is aesthetically pleasing is the function, that the form only valorizes the function. What does she mean? Let me give you an example. You've probably seen the Soviet Union posters of working men and women. Those posters are beautiful. The aesthetic is beautiful, at least I find them beautiful. But what I love about them is how the form, so the material, the design, the colors, enhances the function, which is industrial work. In other words, the working class is beautiful when it works, when it produces value, when it has a function. On the other hand, the working class is perceived as ugly when it doesn't work, it doesn't produce value, and so it doesn't have a function. So for example, it isn't employed. Now look at these two pictures. I found the one on the left here in Barcelona and this one in Berlin. So that is the type of working class that can be represented in the public space. They are both great, beautiful, that's why I took a picture of them. But you would never see a monument representing an unemployed man or a sex worker. So does that mean that there is no beauty in that? Okay, tell me how you feel when you see this. I saw it when I went to the MoMA in New York last year. It was set up and photographed by Jeff Wall, and it is inspired by Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. The novel is great, the picture is great, it was located in a very dark room, and it represented a black working class man living in an underground room wired with hundreds of electric lights, operated by power stolen from the city's electric grid. The book, the picture, is about, you guessed it, invisibility, and I don't want to say too much about it because I've been thinking about a video I want to make and I'll elaborate a bit more on that one. But other example, one day I came across this Instagram page which gathers a collection of old pictures taken by a photographer running the page. I was skeptical at first because I believed it was yet another middle class guy glamorizing the working class, but I was wrong. Rob Bremner simply took pictures of the people around him throughout his life, and it's beautiful as it is. What's beautiful about it, in my opinion, is the fact that Bremner knows the people he takes pictures of, and in the comment section, other people share how it reminds them of this or that member of their family. Bremner's work is valued by the people around him, and sure, we can politicize it, we can intellectualize it, but it doesn't need that to be valuable, if that makes sense. To conclude, I find the way the working class plays with form and function to be inspirational. They are de facto a source of inspiration for high fashion that then translates into everyday fashion. At a time where fast fashion is being criticized on all levels, the working class aesthetic and practices of buying secondhand, repopularizing old trends, refurbishing, experimenting is regaining popularity. So it's an opportunity for those of us who are not working class anymore or have never been to actually engage with the working class, to understand its values and beauty instead of either mocking it or fetishizing it for street credibility or capitalist gains. I'm starting to work on a really cool video that uses some of the things we talked about today, a new way of envisioning fashion. I'm really excited about this video. It will be out at the end of the month, hopefully, so if you don't want to miss that, subscribe to the channel if it's not already done. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, the conversation continues in the comment section. Don't forget to like, no, I've already asked you to subscribe. Did you though? A big thank you to my patrons for their support, and a special thanks to top tier patrons Christopher, Ian, Donage, Ren, Alex, Sam, Jay, Dakota, Manuel, Benjamin, Oswald, Carla, and Perry. And finally, before I leave, I'd like to talk to you about today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. You can create your own website around your preferred aesthetic from a catalog of templates and use it as a landing platform for all the activity you do: YouTube, online shop, blog, podcast, photography, etc. Once that is set up, you can connect all your social media accounts and share content between different platforms. Squarespace can also help you create effective email campaigns to really connect with your community. Finally, they have this very cool feature where you can connect and learn from other creators like Adrien Raquel, who will show you how you can best use the platform. If you feel like Squarespace is made for you and you want to check it out, go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you've experimented and you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/alice.cappelleyt to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you, Squarespace, for sponsoring the video. That is it. All I have to say now is salut!